Welcome. My name is George Pearson, and I run the How to Gurus channel here on YouTube. Most of the videos on my channel are short demonstrations of the different tools and techniques that you'll find in different software programs. Right now I have several hundred of these quick videos available on YouTube. This video, though, is different. This is one in a series of longer project demonstrations that I'm doing that show you how to complete complex projects from start to finish, such as changing this background or adding in these swirls or changing hair color. All the images I use in these are public domain, and you'll find a link to the pictures in the description if you want to work along and follow my demonstrations. Okay, let's go ahead and move into the project. In this project, I'm going to show you how to clean up a photograph on a difficult background. In this instance, we're talking about this planking back here on this pier. The problem is that the planking is on a perspective, making it difficult for me to do any kind of standard clone and stamp. Now, I can't match that perspective in there. I could, of course, clone and stamp from here to there, and then from here to here, and here to here, just do little pieces, and I could make it work. Take a little bit of time, and I could make it work. This would be easy over here. Same thing here. I can, clone and stamp just little steps at a time, just little thin strips, and I could make that work. But it's a little more difficult to do it that way. I couldn't, though, clone from this nice clean area over here and paste over to this area over here because the perspective is off by a little bit. If I did that, the lines wouldn't match up. So how do we fix this? Well, you do this with a tool called Vanishing Point. It's up here on the filter. Vanishing Point right there, and I can put in a perspective grid using this tool and then paste into that perspective grid. Okay, let's now get set up for doing this fix. First off, let's examine our picture. There's a little something here. I'm going to leave that in. It's kind of covering part of the kid, but that's okay. I'll leave that bit in. This looks like a wig or something. We'll get rid of that. We have this boot to get rid of over here, and a little bit, looks like part of a pant leg right there to get rid of that. We have this chair, of course. That has to go. And a little toe. The toe is easy. This is just a straight clone stamp. I'll get rid of that toe. There's also this fishing line right here. It's not a problem down here. It actually makes sense to be there, but it doesn't look very good across this child's face. So we'll go ahead and we'll take out that fishing line as well, just to clean things up a little bit. Now the picture I'm using, this is a public domain picture, and there is a link for this picture in the materials section if you want to download the picture and match this video exactly with the same image. Okay, on the right hand side, the first thing I always do is I make a copy of my background layer like that, and I work on that new layer. I do that so that I have the background layer protected and saved in case I make a mistake or I want to go back to my original. So I always work on a copy of that. Let's now take a look at that Vanishing Point tool. So Filter, Vanishing Point. Now, we have our grid lines, as you can see in here, placed in by the planking on this pier, and using the tool right there, this is the Create Plane tool, I can create a perspective plane that matches those grid lines. Now I want to paint out this section here, so I'm going to choose some grid lines that are around or close to. I'll start right here. I'll click there and drag, and I could go along a line this way, horizontal or vertical. Let's start off with the horizontal. I'm just following along this line in here. And over to here someplace, that's fine. Click, and then I'll pull down to maybe this line down here. Now, at this point, I need to eyeball this to try to decide where a horizontal line going across this is in correct perspective. And it looks like it's right about there should be okay. So I'll choose that one, click on that. Then I'm going to pull this one down, and again, I'm on the right line here, this line here, but I want to make sure my angle here is correct, so I'm going to eyeball this, and so you can figure out about where that should be. It should be pretty close to the other one. Now if this is done right, the length of the bottom line should be longer than the length of the top line. If it's like this, it's obviously wrong. If it's like that, it's a bit too much. But the bottom line should be longer than your top line. So I'm going to guess in about here someplace. Now if there's an actual grid in here, this would be easy to see. Now once you have your grid down, you can enlarge your grid by pulling on these handles in here. Actually make it larger or smaller and see how well it matches up. It matches up just fine there. That's okay. And I'm pulling it this way, just off screen, and I'll pull it off screen over here. That's not lining up too well. As you can see, it's getting off on this line here. So I'm going to adjust my lines a bit here, trying to get those lines matching correctly across the top. Getting a little close in there. I'm just looking at these lines in here and comparing these lines to the lines in the ground. Let's pull this out a bit. Okay, that line is now matching pretty well. That looks good. Let's pull it up. The one below that is matching. It's off maybe just a little bit, so we're not quite there. I'll pull it bottom out just a little bit. That looks pretty good. So this line here, that's pretty close. That line's pretty close. That's looking good. That looks good. So I think we're pretty close now on our grid. And again, you just move the handles around, eyeball it, try to match up your lines as well as possible to get that grid to line up. I can now copy from over here over to down here, and we'll see how well this works. There's your clone stamp tool. You can set your diameter, your hardness, your opacity, and if you want to use healing, it's right over here. Now hold down the Alt key, and I can then click on an area here and then pull that over there and just line it up visually, and that should match up pretty well. There we go. Actually, that matches up real nicely on that line, as you can see there. So we've matched our lines nicely because of that perspective. Now I'll need to do a new bit up here because that chair's in the way. So I'm going to come down one notch, and let's grab right from there, click there, pull that up just a little bit. We'll fix that upper edge there in a later step. And just a little bit here to kind of make that line a little bit more solid. There we go. Okay, now the coloration is off by a little bit. I can adjust that with our other tools, but the main thing here is that we have cleaned out that boot and matched the perspective of those lines to do it. So there you go. That is one of our techniques to clean this up. Some things will clean up just fine using our straight tools. I can take from here and paste over to there. We should be able to get rid of this just by eyeballing that. But I want to get up against this edge here, so this is going to require a little bit of a selection. Not much, just a touch. So I'll just grab the polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to do just a quick little selection, just clicking for my points in there, and we're going to work into that area. And I'll grab from over here someplace. Now I'm using the clone stamp tool. Alt key, click from there, and let's just do just a little paste in like that. Again, this doesn't take much because there's nothing really in there away from that area. So that one is now solved. Let's deselect that. This boot, that's a cinch. Let's just grab our line here, Alt click, move it right over to there, make sure the line lines up, and then a little paint, and there we go. And I'll just get rid of that. So that one was easy. Up on here, I want to get rid of that little bit right there, a little bit of blue. Again, I'm just going to copy some fence here and just put it up there. Same thing. Come down here a little bit, Alt click, and then a little paste, and there you go. That solves that one. So moving along nicely, all the bottom stuff is now fixed. We now have this chair over here. Now the chair is a little more difficult because of this edge. So I need a selection in here around the edge of the child so I don't accidentally paint over that child. I want to be able to just paint into this area here. Now we notice down here I can clone from areas outside of a selection and clone into an area. But having the selection, make sure I don't paint into that area. So let's make a selection in here. This will require a little bit of a zoom in so you get this done properly. Maybe a little too tight. That should be okay. So that's where we're going to be working in. I want to just work in this area here. We'll do this with just the clone stamp tool, just copying from here and pasting over here. But let's, again, make a selection. I'll use my favorite polygonal lasso tool for this, starting outside here. And then just come in and carefully select right along the edge of this child's face in here. Now, there are lots of tools you can use to make your selection. Use the one that you're most comfortable with. A pen tool is a great one to use in here, making a selection with a pen tool. Because of the stuff in behind here, that chair leg and the lines from the boardwalk in there from the pier, and the values are very similar. This isn't a good place to use magic wand selection tool or background removal tool, any of those things. Those will not work very well here. So this has to be a manual selection to really do a good job. Okay, so there we go. And I'll just come down here and wrap this up outside. Go back to the beginning. Gives me my selection. Okay, clone stamp tool. So you have right here. Click on that and I'll start right over here and start by getting rid of the initial edge in there. So I'm working in close first, then I'll clean up this stuff outside as a secondary pass. And I'm just going to clone right from the same line and just pull that over. There we go. And that's about the clone stamp tool, is that you can see where it's going to be applying the stamp. You can see it really easy here. You can see where it's going to be applying, so you can line that up. So if I work from a line like this, it makes it very easy to come in and match up that area and make for a very clean alignment. We're a little off in there. This is where that perspective tool would be real handy. I think we can fake it pretty well there. Now for all these, I'm using a mouse on this. I'm not using a tablet or a stylus. Some of these things are actually much easier if you're working with a tablet and a stylus. But I'm keeping these techniques as simple as possible for these demos. Actually, that works out quite well in there. I'll just leave that as is. I'm going to fake out the line on the right-hand side here. Again, just using the clone stamp tool to come in and clean out the areas. The real trick here, aside from just carefully lining up the starting position, is that we have made that selection to protect the side of the child's head to make it as clean as possible. And a little more work on that line. Not quite getting it exactly right. Again, this might have been a bit easier if I had used the vanishing point tool. Now, the problem with the vanishing point tool is you don't have as much control over the clone stamp part of it. I can't see my initial spot. We don't have that big circle on the X to work from, and I don't have that bit where I can see how it's going to be applied either. Those are specific to the clone stamp, and those are not available in the vanishing point tool. So it's not a perfect solution. It's very good where it's a real difficult spot, but sometimes doing it the old-fashioned way like this actually works out better. But there we go. We've taken out that chair. Okay, let's deselect that. Just a little bit of careful work. Nothing difficult about that. Just, again, being careful with the job. So all we have left then is just that fishing line right down there. Let's come in and see that. You can see there it is. We can try different things on this. There are other tools to use. I can try the spot healing tool. Let's bring our size down a little bit on that. So we can get rid of this little blemish there. That's good. Get rid of blemish right there. That's not so good. Probably because I ran off the edge of the page up there. So just a little bit of that. And that didn't work out well there at all. So the spot healing brush sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. It depends upon the spot. I don't like that. So I think I'll do this one the old-fashioned way with the clone stamp tool again. Much smaller brush. That's pretty good. And just a little bit of careful clone work. And just trying to match the values in here. A little bit tricky when you're working something like this that has such obvious edges to it. A little bit of back and forth is required to make it as clean as possible, and just an artistic eye for that. Not perfect, but I think we're close. Okay, real tricky in there because that soft edge. So I'll do a little bit right there. Try to eyeball that. I think that's pretty good. And let's see if we can get that edge. All right, looks nice. There's a little bit of a line showing there. Maybe I'll just come in just a bit to disguise that edge. All right, this part's straightforward. This is easy. Just match up that edge and do some of that blue. Nothing difficult in there. You can't even see the line here, but I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of stuff anyway in there just to make sure. And then let's get rid of that fish hook here. Again, just being careful. Like that, and that has been removed. All right, let's now back out a little bit, see where we're at. And let's do fit on screen. There we go. So using a proper selection of tools, kind of mixing and matching on the tools, we can come in here and do a real nice cleanup. Now I could spend a little more time on that eye. Still a little bit of a line showing, not much. I'll probably go back and spend a little more time there trying to get the values exactly right. And over here we can try to match these values a bit better. Let's just use the burn tool here and exposure 50%. That's pretty good. I'm just going to come in and just kind of tap in. Kind of missed it there. Let's step backward a bit, make it a little bit larger brush and a lot softer. And just kind of tap in here just a little bit to try to bring those values down. It's something which people aren't really going to be seeing. It's at the in behind. How the focus is up here, they won't really notice that, but a little bit of dodge and burn can soften down that area. So there we go. There's a nice cleanup. So here's the original with all that stuff in there, and then here's the final, all that stuff cleaned out. Again, using a selection of the different tools for cleaning this picture up, with the main one and the main problem, of course, being that boot over there, and using that perspective tool to clean that boot out. Now you could have done the whole thing, of course. I could have done this with just the clone stamp tool as well, but this works out pretty well. Let's just do one last little bit, I think, up there. I'm not really happy with that. I'm going to use the clone stamp tool here. Let's bring our brush size up a little bit. And I'm just going to just pulling this in just a little bit to help hide that edge. And there we go. I'm actually repeating something in there. Let me see if I can hide those bits. Okay, that's better. Just a couple little touch-ups. And there we are. So we have finished that background cleanup on a difficult subject. I have just a few questions I want to answer about these techniques. First one, all this fake stuff I did here, is take a look at the mode up here. I was working in RGB color mode. And the reason for that is if you're in CMYK mode, I'll choose, not flatten there, and filter. Notice a vanishing point is not available in CMYK mode. So if you need to be doing this for print work, you'll have to use the vanishing point in RGB mode and then convert over to CMYK for your final output, just like we did just now. Okay, let's just go back to RGB again. Now, is there a way to take that grid that we've drawn there and put that grid on a layer? In other words, you can use the vanishing point tool to build a grid and use that grid as artwork. No, you can't. That's not what the vanishing point tool does. That will not work for you, so you can't do that. You can, though, create grids in other ways. You can use other tools in here to create lines and so forth and build a grid manually. If you want a real fancy grid, you can do that kind of stuff easily over in a program like Adobe Illustrator and then bring that artwork in from there over here into Photoshop. That's the way I would do it. I would build my grid in Illustrator and then just bring it in as a layer into Photoshop. Now, do you need to use the vanishing point filter? In other words, can you do this exact same thing in earlier versions of Photoshop? Well, obviously, yes. We used the vanishing point filter over here because I wanted to show you how it worked, but we didn't use it down here, and I didn't use it for the chair. So obviously, you can use it, do the same kind of cleanup without using the vanishing point tool. It's just a nice tool for this kind of a tricky thing. Now, if you have even more of a grid showing like a tile floor or something, or a building with bricks on the side of the building, the vanishing point tool becomes very, very useful for those kinds of surfaces. It's not as critical here, but there are some surfaces where you almost need to have that tool for doing those kinds of places. Things like the side of a brick building, which is in heavy perspective. It's very, very useful for those kind of very, very difficult surfaces. So you don't have to use it. You can use just regular techniques if you're careful, as we did here on the right-hand side. But it is just another tool to have in your toolkit to make this work a little bit easier for some of these tricky surfaces. Okay, so there we are. That is how to clean up a background on a difficult surface. Thank you for watching this special Photoshop photography project video. Don't forget to subscribe so that you will get first notice of new project videos in the future. Just click on this link right here where it says subscribe here. You can get all 12 project videos in this series along with 26 special videos demonstrating the tools and techniques that I used in these projects by clicking on this link right down here. And then thank you again for watching this training video.